You don't have to have a podcast to be a voice for Jesus. You don't have to be an author to be a voice for Jesus. You don't have to have a church background. You don't have to have a ministry degree. Like, you can easily be a voice for Jesus in whatever he has called you to do.
One of the biggest things that a guy needs is to know that, hey, you are needed. You're not just loved, you're not just wanted, you're actually needed, and we need you and the skills that only you have to step foot into this battle.
The Bible was so true to me, the Word of God was so true to me that it almost felt like I had this whole new inheritance through Christ that it couldn't go wrong.
You were meant to be you, specifically, uniquely you, and sometimes you have to actually step out and stand out from that crowd to step into the purpose you were designed to fulfill.
God started opening up more and more doors once the original purpose got formed, for me.
Whatever each person's battle is, and there's multiple of them, we're meant to actually play a role that nobody else can play.
Welcome back to the show. We have an incredible guest for you guys today. I'm so excited to introduce them. But before I do, I wanted to tell you about our friends at Express Employment Professionals in the DFW, the Johnson County area. One of my favorite things about being partnered with them is that I feel like people talk to me a lot about their life situations because of the ministry that we have and just me being a friendly guy and whatnot. I feel like the Lord really has me as a bridge in this season. And we were actually able to connect Sonia with one of our friends from church who loves the show that is in need of a new job. And so if that's you, if you're in need of a new job, reach out to me. I'll connect you with Sonia and help you find some work in the DFW area. And if you're a staffing agency or you're a company that's needing somebody for a role that needs to be filled, also reach out to me. I'd love to help you as well. Or you can go directly to their website and see what's on the needs for that list. And that's going to be in the description of our episode. So thank you so much to Express Employment Professionals for sponsoring us today. And we're going to be diving into this episode right now. It's called The Power of Resilience. Basically, the resilience is a powerful weapon. Okay. And I think that it's something that we as Christians need in the chaotic and the carnage that's going to be taking place in 2024. We're already seeing some massive things take place in the world around us, and there's never been a better time to be resilient and tough and just be leaning on the body of Christ to be able to get us through it with community. And we have an incredible guest coming on today. He's a licensed therapist. He's all about helping people with no fluff on it, and he just gets directly to the point. And I'm so glad that God connected us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Trey Tucker in the building.
What up, Zach? It's good to see you, brother. It's been a while.
Hey, he's here. I love it. Beautiful setup you got there, man. I love the mountains, and it's great to see you today, man. How's life treating you?
Life is good, man. I am in Tennessee. That's hence the mountains in the background here, throwing a little shout out to the mountains. Although I got to admit, I was born in Florida, and I'm a beach bum at heart, but I can't be like decorating stuff with a bunch of beach themes in Tennessee. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
All right, two things. What part of Tennessee and also what part of Florida?
Chattanooga is where I am right now. And then I was born in Jacksonville, Florida. So I'm a Jags fan for the NFL, although I like college better. But until recently, it's been tough to be a Jags fan, man. I'm proud of Trevor Lawrence and what they're doing right now, but we got to take the next step up because I'm tired of being just beaten down by all these other teams.
Yeah, man, you can't win with a cool haircut.
That's right. They need the close crop like we got,
Yeah, you got to shave the ears, trim the ears down. You might be able to get a W. But no, that's cool, man. I'm actually from Florida myself, and we've been doing a lot of life in Tennessee as of lately. I've been to Chattanooga out there, and we've been to like the Smoky Mountains, and we also been over to one of the really cool tourist spots. I forget what it is that has like huge cliffs and everything and all that. So it's been a good time out there. So it's awesome that you're out there, man. So is that where a lot of your clientele is for your business and helping people, or are you more so online? Like, what's the vibe like for that?
It definitely started local, and then as some of these videos took off, it became more of just a national thing, an online thing. I really don't have much of a physical presence anymore, a physical office.
Wow.
And I miss that in some ways. I miss it, but on the other hand, it lets me meet people that I would never get to meet just in person or on the street or whatnot. So it's fun to get to meet with people in all walks of life and all different kinds of fields and people I never thought that I'd get to have any kind of interaction with. But I love Texas. You talked about being there, man. I've got friends who live in Texas. People joke with me. They say, you really wish you were from Texas, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I kind of do.
Yeah, we got pride here, man. We got a lot of pride for our state. We have a lot of things that we don't bend the knee on, and we walk around with guns on us. And yeah, it's pretty cool, man. We love the Lord, and we're not afraid to testify about it. So it's definitely God's God's state, in my opinion, you know, and I do hope that revival starts from the what's being birthed in Texas. So I love that you love Texas, man. That's so cool. So you tell me about the videos, man, and that's kind of an amazing thing that I've been able to witness as one of your followers for some time now, and being able to see how much you sow into the online space when it comes to helping people. So talk to me about that. When did that form within yourself? When did that become an idea, and how has God blessed it and breathed on it?
It really is something I never thought I would have done, because I don't like even being on social media as a user. And somewhere around like the end of 2020, maybe going into 21, I can't remember exactly when it was, but somebody came up to me and said, actually two people that don't know each other came up to me and said, hey, you should post social media videos. And I said, well, why would I do that? Because I'm not even on there myself.
Right.
So, and they said, well, you can help people that you never would get to meet in person. And if you know almost any therapist, you know that we have plenty of addictions, but our main addiction most likely is going to be that we're addicted to helping people. So it has a good motive, but sometimes we can take it a little far. And so if you're ever trying to get a therapist to do something they don't want to do, just tell them they could help people that they wouldn't want to meet or would never get to meet. And that's what happened with me. It was two people that were both online, and they said, you know, there's bad information out there, and you know, you could counterbalance some of that. And so I thought, all right, I don't want to do this, because at that point I had never really been on camera before, so it was very uncomfortable for me. But I thought, all right, I'll post one video, and if that happens to help somebody, then great. And if it does, maybe I'll think about doing some more. So
wow.
I posted one, and I look back, and it's cringy bad, Zach. It's terrible how bad it is. But for some reason, it helped some people. And the challenge, the kind of the competitive nature came out in me when people would put questions in the comments. And I knew, okay, these questions, if I'm really going to answer them, they should probably take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that to answer. But let me see, can I answer this stuff in 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds most? And that became like, I used to play sports, and I don't get to play anymore because I'm just past that prime. But man, that became the way I was like, all right, how can I beat the system of taking all this information and just whittle it down?
Wow.
And then it just kind of became fun from there. People would ask different questions, and I would get to see some of the impacts that some of those videos would have, and people would share their stories. Right. It's been really fun. And then it can kind of become, I know you know this, it can kind of become a little bit of a burden, because it's like this beast that continues to want to be fed more and more. So yeah. I'm definitely grateful, but I have to take some time away from it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's so interesting that you talk about like helping people as the main factor of it. When did that become birthed in you to where it's like you had such a heart for humanity that you're willing to do the social media stuff and the video stuff, even though you had no experience with it, in order to achieve that goal?
I always loved the face-to-face interactions with people. And that really started before I was ever a therapist. So when I was in middle school, I started realizing that people just opened up to me when I wasn't even really trying to get them to open up. And, you know, I don't know what it was. Maybe it's because I've always preferred to listen more than talk, or, I couldn't explain it back then. And I still kind of can't, but it became pretty clear that people were just coming to me with things that they weren't really opening up about to anybody else. So I didn't know what to do with that as a middle schooler, but I kind of filed it away, and stuff kept happening like that in high school and then through college. And I didn't become a therapist until kind of mid-career. But the other jobs that I was in, people just kept bringing me situations that I didn't know what to tell them. And I was honored they were bringing it up, but I had no idea really what to help them with or what kind of advice to give. So I always liked being that person that people came to, and I wanted to be able to actually give them something that was valuable in return, because they were giving me the gift of their vulnerability. And so that's when I decided mid-career, all right, I'm going back to grad school, because I already had an MBA. I was working in the corporate world, and I had the master's in business. I was like, I don't want to torture myself through another master's, but I don't have any other way of actually getting to this place of becoming a therapist. So I did that, kind of trudged through grad school. And when I look back, actually a couple of the most influential people in my life were counselors. Like the school counselor that I went to school, where I went to high school, his name is Jim Mankey, and he's still one of my heroes and mentors to this day. But that dude, he just had a gift. He was like God's literal angel on earth. People just flocked to him just to talk to him and hang out with him. And he just had the most welcoming and funny presence. And so I look back, I'm like, yeah, I must have seen the impact that people like Jim were having. And I wanted to have that same kind of impact. And now, like you said, God has opened up these doors that the videos have opened. And I don't really have a explanation or even a plan for the future. I'm just kind of seeing what he wants to do next. I'm kind of along for the ride. I'm all about setting goals and, looking into the future as much as possible. But I've also found for me, if I look too much into the future, I start trying to control too much.
Yeah.
And I need to just kind of hold things with more of an open hand.
I love that, man. And I love that you including God in that, because that was kind of going to be my next question / like conversation point. I heard this verse today when I was preparing for this episode that really spoke to me. And it says in Luke 6:46, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do the things that I say?" And I don't know, that verse really just like, it's one of those reminders of like, man, we can claim to have faith, we can say like, yeah, Jesus is Lord, but are we doing what he calls us to do? Are we doing what he says to do? And it sounds like in your field and in your practice, as well as just what you're communicating to the world and your message and your voice and your mission, it all seems like you're in line with what the gospel lays out for us and what Jesus lays out for us. Is this where you built like the foundation of your practice?
It is, because I know, I'm very aware of how often I'm sinning on a moment by moment basis. And I'm very scared to even consider how many sins I'm unaware of. So the whole sins of omission and commission, I'm like, just don't even let me see some of the sins that I'm not even aware of under the surface. So I'm somebody that like, there's a pastor that I like a lot. His name is Robert Morris. He's actually out there in Texas in the
Gateway.
South Lake area.
Is there?
And yeah, and
friend of the show. I'm just kidding. He's not.
Hey, get him. Y'all will get along.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah, exactly.
But he says, he talks about when he tells his testimony, he goes, "I never got over getting saved," and I pray that is true of me. And on some days, I get back into the wrong mindset, and I take the steering wheel back and redo the same sins that I know better than to do. But on more often than not, on those days where I'm actually doing my best to do what Jesus says, like I know that ultimately he wants what's best for me, and again, he gets glory for that. But man, there's something about the power of the mind and deceptive thoughts that can get into us where we just think, well, maybe this time I won't end up damaging myself, or maybe this time it'll turn out different. And we can just deceive ourselves so much. But yeah, long answer to your question. Yeah, my appreciation for the good news of what Jesus did, it's definitely, if not the driving factor of most days, it's definitely one of them.
Wow. I love that, man. And that's so good, because it just shows that whatever we do and whatever God calls us to, we can glorify him. I always, try to communicate to our audience that you don't have to have a podcast to be a voice for Jesus. You don't have to be an author to be a voice for Jesus. You don't have to have a church background. You don't have to have a ministry degree. Like, you can easily be a voice for Jesus in whatever he has called you to do. And he wants you to be in that seat. There's so many different positions of career that you can take. There's so many different paths you can take. But if you're not wearing the jersey of Christ where you're at, it's like then you're not living out what he's called you to do. And he's not living out what he's told you to do. So I commend you for that. I think that's awesome. And the fact that you're helping people is just incredible. So I wanted to talk a lot about resilience, because we actually met in one of the best kind of little chunks of my life. I was actually out of town in Oklahoma. I was at a preaching gig at the House of Joy. And it was cool because I felt like the Lord just kept like sending awesome like blessings. It was almost like you're so aware of God when you're kind of traveling, and when you're here on a mission for him, you're so aware of things, and everything that comes in, you start to see like the little kingdom thread. And I remember you messaged me on Fiverr, where I do a lot of my freelance writing work, and you're like, man, I just checked you out. You seem like a perfect fit to help me kind of piece together the presentation speech that I'm giving at this event. And it was all, and then I was like, yeah, let's do it. You know, it's cool. You're a believer in Jesus. I was too. We hit it off. And it was cool because in your speech, you talked a lot about resilience. And it's funny, when I was texting you the other day, that was one of the first things that you mentioned. And I'm like, man, I love that word, because I feel like we have to have resilience as the body of Christ for not just this year, but for this whole decade. I mean, since 2020, man, we as the body of Christ have been, you know, we've been tested, we've been persecuted, we've been mocked, you know, in culture and society and in the world and in politics by our own president. The day before Easter, but you want to say it's transgender visibility day, when in reality it's Easter, the resurrection day. Like, come on, somebody. And, you know, he does that thing on purpose, you know, and you can say he didn't, but you know, we know what he's doing. Anyway, so back to resilience. So when it comes to resilience, I ain't going off all day all about that, but when it comes to resilience, like, how do we kind of level up in that front? Like, what are some thoughts you have in that realm of study that you've been really passionate about as of late?
Yeah, the other day I was on a hike with my 5-year-old nephew, and we were just, you know, as much as you can hike with a 5-year-old, but I was letting him lead the way, because, you know, I feel like it kind of gives him some confidence to kind of be the trailblazer, the explorer. I'm just kind of there in case something goes wrong. But, you know, he's trudging through the leaves, and we're doing fine. And all of a sudden, boom, he falls down. And at first I'm like, oh no, is he hurt? Okay, first, let's check on him. He's fine. He looks up at me. He goes, "How'd I trip?" He's just in shock. Like,
he was
how'd
confused.
this happen?
He was curious.
Right? It's just so shocked. So a couple things hit me. He asked the most important question whenever we have a setback is, how'd this happen? You know, like, what do I need to do to avoid this in the future? What part did I play in this setback? What part can be controlled the next time? What part can't be controlled? So that part hit me. It's like, okay, well, that's a really good life lesson. But then it also hit me, like, he was surprised that he fell. And that was the first time he had fallen in the woods. You know, he's fallen in other areas of life, but that was the first time he fell there. So he was surprised. And I thought, okay, well, the more we hike, more he's probably going to fall. And eventually he's going to get to the point where the fall doesn't surprise him anymore. And that, I realize, is one of the key parts of being resilient, is you got to expect the setback, and you got to expect to trip and fall. Now, we're not trying to do that by any means, but when it happens, if it just throws us and flusters us because, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, then we're going to be wasting our time just trying to wish it didn't happen. And then we're probably not going to make the best decision about how to respond to the fall. So his little fall gave me, I'm gonna probably use that in my next speech, but it's like, oh my goodness, this is life lessons, at least on the early stages of how to handle a setback and how to be resilient.
Ooh, I love that, man. And what is the importance of that? And how can men specifically, how can men become more resilient, would you say?
Yeah, and this is my favorite audience to talk to, because so often, and this, whatever I'm going to say, a lot of it can still apply to women, because a lot of women have some of these same kind of qualities, and so I don't want to leave them out of this conversation. But most often, it's men, at least in my experience, that have past experiences that put these messages inside of them. And these messages, you can consider our brains like wet cement, especially when we're young. And when we're young, that wet cement of our brain is more receptive to messages and memories. And so when stuff happens to us that was painful or scary or disappointing, those leave messages inside of us. And especially in men, it can sound like, well, I'm just not good enough, or I just don't have the right stuff in me to really be successful, or, you know, life is just one disappointment after another. We take on these burdens, and a lot of times we don't even know they're in there. And then that wet cement, as we get older, dries up and gets hardened, and those messages, those burdens get stuck in there. And we don't even know that's kind of just part of what we're carrying around every day, kind of part of our operating system. So whatever the current situations are that we face, it's not like we're coming to those situations with some sort of a blank slate. We're bringing all those messages from the past into that moment. And so guys, consequently, a lot of us, we feel underappreciated. We feel like a failure. We feel like we're not noticed. We feel like, man, everything I keep trying, it just doesn't work out. It's just one disappointment after another. It's too costly to hope, all that kind of stuff. And so we're built to be battlers. We're built to actually fight a war. And whether that war is in your job or to fight for your family or any sort of ministry, whatever each person's battle is, and there's multiple of them, we're meant to actually play a role that nobody else can play. And that's one of the biggest messages that I've found that really wakes a guy up, because we get so not just discouraged, but also we can kind of lull ourselves to sleep. We can just escape all the negativity and the beliefs that we don't like about ourselves. We can try to escape that into things. We can get into all that. But the biggest thing, to answer your question, at least one of the biggest things that a guy needs, is to know that, hey, you are needed. You're not just loved, you're not just wanted, you're actually needed, and we need you and the skills that only you have to step foot into this battle.
Wow, that's so real, and it's so true, because it's like, I think, and I'm sure you agree with me on this one, as will our faithful audience. They've really neutered men in the country and in society. They've really feminized us. They've really made us out to be the bad guy. They made us out to not have value. They've really tried to just, hinder the men, because, and if you think about it in this way, in this context, it's like, man, if you look at America and you look at the strongest men, in the military, what do? We're shipping them off overseas every generation. So it's like the men that are here right now, it's almost like we're at this place of not understanding kind of our role as what we're supposed to be doing in the world that we're living in. We obviously know we're supposed to be providing, but I think it's something that needs to be bigger than that. I think it's on us to defend the children. It's on us to be voices for God. It's on us to step out into faith and then declare some things are wrong. In the school board meetings, it shouldn't just be moms in the school board meetings. It should be parents. It should be fathers. And it's on us to lead our children into the deeper things of God and have a relationship with God and teaching them the values of God, as well as it's on the men to lead their family to church. I think there's a study that says children are 90% more likely to come to the faith of Christ if their father is the one that brings them to church and leads the family to church. And that's just incredible. That just shows the power of the man in the family. And it really goes down to the family unit. And it seems like that once we get that kind of figured out and that situated, America could be in a place of thriving again. But right now it seems like we're on a decline because of the family unit falling apart. And is that something that you see very often in your business, as far as the people that are coming to you have kind of a poor relationship with the man in their life, or there's been some family dynamic or dysfunction that has fallen apart because of the man's role not being fulfilled?
Yeah, most of the men that I meet with, whatever their current day issues are, they can 90% of the time we're tying them back to some sort of father wound. And no dad is perfect. So I need everybody to hear that. Every dad is going to fail, quote unquote, at some level. And so you're going to wound your kids. It's just inevitable. It's what you do about it, back to the resilience thing, that really makes a difference. So most of the struggles, especially in men, come from father wounds. But one hopeful thing that I've noticed is when I'm working with adolescents, probably 75% of the time, I can predict whether or not the kid is going to turn the corner and grow really quickly, or is going to stay pretty much in the same problematic place that he's in. And the difference most of the time is the dad is the main point of contact. When the kid is, if I can predict that, if I see that, I can predict that the kid is actually going to make a quick and pretty dramatic turnaround. If the dad is not so involved for whatever reason, then most often, and again, sometimes there's exceptions, but most often the son doesn't really do a whole lot of changing. And there's something to that, where if a son knows that his dad cares about him enough to be involved in the details and to actually show that, hey, I see you, you're special to me, you're worth this quote unquote hassle of working with you through this time period, man, that makes a difference on a level that we just can't research. We just have to see it with our eyes.
I love that you say that. That's so cool. When you have to see something with your eyes and not research, that hits, man. That hits a lot. And so with men specifically, and boys, and just society as a whole right now, the human experience, I should say, how valuable is having purpose in their life, as well as how valuable is having a good tribe that you can rely on and that can be there for you, that you can turn to in a time of need? What are those dynamics that can lead to a healthy generation?
A tribe is essential. And I use the word tribe, and you can use other words like you need a group, you need friends, you need to know who you belong around, who you're accepted around, whatever kind of vernacular you want to put on that. But if you don't have that, then all kinds of unanswered questions happen inside of you. And this is men or women. Mm-hmm. So we have to have that. And we have to also realize that we can't get our identity from them, whoever our group is, whether it's a healthy group or a group that's leading us down a wrong path. Because if I'm looking to my friends to figure out who I am, then I may have some qualities that are actually true to me, but then I'm probably going to miss a lot of my unique qualities. So for example, in a sport, a team sport, there are still individual positions that each team member has to play. So like I'm a big baseball guy, and I played center field growing up. So like, yeah, baseball is a team sport, but I'm going out there in center field and nobody's out there but me. So I've got to bring my unique gifts and talents and personality traits to that position, just like the catcher is bringing a totally different set of skills and traits to his position. So we need a group, but we can't get lost in that group. We can't hide in that group, because that's another tendency that men have, is that when life gets tough, we just don't feel like anybody really cares that we're going through it. Anybody really is going to have a whole lot of sympathy for us. But the main thing is we think, well, I'm going to look weak if I say that I'm going through something. So we tend to just hide. So a lot of times men will take an otherwise healthy thing like a tribe and find a group or a tribe that they can just kind of fade into the background and just become like everybody else. Like, well, I just want to be one of the guys. Right. I just want to be like them. Like, well, I get it. I fully get it, because we want that acceptance, and because two things can be true at once. I get it because we want acceptance, and you weren't meant to be like everybody else. You were meant to be you, specifically, uniquely you. And sometimes you have to actually step out and stand out from that crowd to step into the purpose you were designed to fulfill. And that takes us to the purpose.
Right. I was just going to say that.
Yeah, exactly. That back to that thing we were saying about everybody needs a mission or a battle that they know they're fighting in their life, preferably multiple. Because if you don't have something like that in your life, you're just waking up in the morning and you're just doing the same thing you did yesterday and the day before that. And eventually you just kind of, at the best, you get bored. And at the worst, it leads to some pretty dark thoughts and dark places. But we have to know and believe it deep down that we're created on purpose for a purpose. So you're not an accident. You're here on purpose, and you have a purpose for your life. And it's not like something that's, people hear that word purpose sometimes and they think, well, I better hit it 100%. And if I don't get it 100%, I've totally missed my purpose. No, relax, because your purpose can ultimately change and shift as you go through different seasons of life. But it can start with your faith. If you're a believer in Jesus, your overall purpose is to spread his presence, his glory wherever you go. And you can do that at work. You can do that in your family. You can do that in your sport, your roommates, whatever the situation is. That's your ultimate purpose. And then you can kind of have little micro purposes. So for me, one of my micro purposes is I can help people with their mindset, their mental health, their emotions. So if I were to change jobs, would that mean I've lost my purpose? Of course not. It just means that I'm going to work my purpose out in a different kind of way. But we got to know you're here on purpose. You're here for a purpose. And if you start pursuing that, you'll start to feel the emotions you want to feel. And we can get into that as well. But that's one of the traps that men fall into, is we feel emotions we don't want to feel. We have thoughts we don't want to have. And we don't realize that, let's check my tribe and let's check my purpose and see, are those things aligning into what I want?
Man, that is so interesting. And I'll speak on both of those things. Then I'd love to dive into the feelings and emotions and thoughts aspect of it, especially with men, because your boy has a hard time regulating my own emotions. So let's talk about that if we need to.
Join the club, brother.
Yeah, right. I can't even, like with my children, I was talking to our previous guest, Dr. John Deloney, about that. I was like, yo, when my kids have a moment, and their emotions are high. Like it makes my emotions high, and I don't even know how to like handle them and whatnot. But in regards to the purpose and tribe, I really believe that this is for somebody out there. For some reason, the Lord's kind of putting it on my heart that it's when you talk about faith, and I love that because it starts there, because that kind of gives you the new identity that you may not have had before, or it might give some clarity to the confusion as to what you're doing here, why you're here, who you're supposed to be serving, who you're supposed to be loving, who you're supposed to be waking up for. You know, it's like God gives sleep to the ones he loves. It says that in Psalms, and God gives breath to the one he loves every morning. Every day is like a gift. You know, it's not promised, that's for sure. So it's like we have an opportunity to live for a higher purpose, something bigger than us. And I think once we kind of zoom out of our own little, like our own life, and we realize like, man, this is such a bigger picture of humanity, of people and of love and all these other things, we get to really see that like, all right, relax. It's not all on your shoulders to have your career figured out at 32. It's not all on you to be able to have the perfect wife and the perfect life at 28. You know, it's like there's you once you start surrendering that like the way your life is going to be to the hands of the Lord, that's when I feel like you're able to live in a purpose, because he reveals things to you throughout that journey. You know, he reveals, like at first it started as a podcast, then it was like a book, and then it was like, let's start speaking. Then it was, let's go to Africa. It was like God started opening up more and more doors once the original purpose got formed, you know, for me. And that was something that I feel has been so helpful in kind of bringing the tribe here, because there was a lot of the beginning, you know, a couple years of where I've been on this path with Christ started in, I don't want to say isolation, but more so like I was in an RV journey. I was working from home a lot. It was COVID time. A lot of that was isolation until like I lived in the purpose long enough for God to start sending me people. So you might not find the tribe right away, but I believe if you found the purpose first, that good tribe will come. God will send you the people that need to be in your tribe. And then as far as the emotions go, man, let's talk about that, because there's so many people out there that don't know how to handle emotions, or they use this thing. I'm guilty on this. Use this as a distraction from those emotions and not wanting to like go there and not knowing how to like cope with those things. So talk to me about that, man. What are your insights on that, and how can men do better, and how can people do better when it comes to that?
So first, is it okay if we use some of your story as a way into that thoughts and emotions topic?
100%.
So that whole process you went through, and I always have to check with people because I don't want to just bombard you with the questions, but that whole process you talked about where it started small, it maybe kind of took some meandering paths and maybe was slower than you might have wanted. How did you navigate the unknowns? Like, how is this going to turn out? Why is this not happening faster? Like, what did you do with that tension during those times?
I would say it was a resilient faith. Like, it was to the point where the Bible was so true to me, the Word of God was so true to me, that it almost felt like I had this whole new inheritance through Christ, that it couldn't go wrong. You know, it was blind. It truly was blind faith. Me and my wife, we packed up all our stuff. We sold our stuff. We quit our jobs, and we went in an RV. That was an RV on the road. You know, we traveled, and we were like, oh, we're going to spread the gospel and grow the show. You know, it was crazy. It was so bold, you know, and I had people being like, yo, what are you going to do for money? And I was like, the Lord will provide, you know, and then I jumped on Fiverr, and things started going well on there, and he did, you know, he totally did. I had to take action steps, of course, of like, all right, let me go check out Fiverr. Let me update my profile. Let me do this. Let me get the word out. So there's action that comes with it, but I would say, you know, a deep faith in the Lord to kind of guide me and lay his hands on me.
Yeah. So you had faith in him, and you kept moving forward. You kept taking action yourself. I love it.
Yeah.
Most people's stories, that at least the people that I interact with, most people's stories, they don't have a whole lot of a faith in their life. And so to bring it to the thoughts and emotions, I work with a lot of guys in their 20s, especially their early 20s. And one of the most common stories I hear is somebody saying, you know what, if I'm really honest, they usually say, I've never told anybody this before. Say, look, on the outside, I look like I've got everything you could want. Like, I'm good looking, I get girls, my grades are good if they're in college, or they make good money if they're in the working world. So everything on the surface looks, from the outside looking in, like I want that guy's life. And then what they end up telling me is, and it never is enough. I never feel like I'm good enough. In fact, I feel like I'm behind everybody else. I feel like everybody else is better than me. I feel like somehow I've missed it and they've got it figured out and I'm just lost. I mean, it is a stark contrast between what you would think they're actually thinking and feeling versus what they actually are experiencing in there. And so consequently, what ends up happening is nobody wants to be thinking and feeling that stuff. I certainly wouldn't want to. So they're going to figure out a way to not feel that way or not think that way. And a lot of times that looks like drinking. I'm going to just drink as often as possible. Maybe if it's not necessarily just getting drunk all the time, but it's enough of a buzz to just kind of silence those voices in their heads that are telling them they suck or that they're not good enough. Other times it's just chasing the next hookup and the next hookup after that. And, you know, they'll even talk about like, yeah, I feel like the man for that moment. And then the next day I feel like a piece of crap again and I feel lonely and I feel like a failure and all that shame. And so I don't want to feel that way again. So I start looking for the next hookup and it just continues this cycle over and over. And you can see whether it's with hookups or substance, you can see quickly how that cycle turns into a really, really tight addiction that becomes hard to penetrate through. Other times, it doesn't have to look that negative or that self-destructive. Other times, it looks like the phone, like you said. Just any way to I'm going to go mindlessly scroll so that I don't have to think the stuff that is in my head and I don't have to feel the stuff that's in my body. Give me something to look at that I can escape it. So it could be the phone. A lot of times, it's movies. I've talked to a number of guys and women too, but the thing they look forward to the most is at the end of the day where they can watch a show or watch a movie and then fall asleep. Like that is their highlight of their whole 24-hour day. Wow. And I asked them, why is that the highlight? And like, because I don't have to outrun all the stuff that chases me down, all the thoughts and the emotions that I don't want to be feeling. So there's people that they'll spend 2 hours watching a movie just because it finally lets them escape all the crap and junk in their head and in their body. So it's a bigger issue than people think.
Why do you think that that's so like so rampant? Like why are the emotions and the thoughts so like, like taking over your day, essentially,
Yeah, well, they're begging to be healed because most of the time what's happening is there's past experiences, kind of like I was saying with that wet cement that our brain used to be, now the hardened cement. Those messages, that's just another way of saying trauma. And I'm not necessarily talking about major traumas because not everybody has those, but we all have smaller traumas or things that caused us pain. And a lot of times, by the way, a lot of people don't realize this. It doesn't have to be necessarily a negative experience. It could actually be an experience that should have happened for you, a good experience that should have happened for you, but didn't. And so either one of those, negative experiences or just unmet experiences, those things are traumas. And the reason that we keep having those overthinking thoughts, those rumination thoughts that we just can't get rid of, and those negative emotions, whether it's anxiety or depression or what have you, something uncomfortable, it's because those traumas are begging to be dealt with. They're like, hey, like we're in here, please get us out. And the problem is it's an uncomfortable process to actually dig in there and to lean into them and get them out. And so a lot of times, we've all heard the phrase, the devil you know is more preferable and more comfortable than the devil you don't know.
That's right.
So a lot of times people just think, well, I'll just live with what I've got instead of doing the scary thing of really digging into this root stuff, because it is a scary process and it has to involve some emotions that have to come out. And a lot of times we think, well, I can't let emotions out because people think I'm weak. Well, no, weakness is pretending that you're experiencing something that you're actually not. Weakness is pretending that you're actually a different person than you actually are. That's weakness. Being strong is saying, hey, here's where I'm struggling. Here's what I'm going through. Here's the things that I don't want part of my life. That's strength right there. It's the superpower of vulnerability. So Amen. The answer is we have to dig into that stuff that is definitely uncomfortable. Otherwise, we just stay kind of stuck going in circles over and over. That's
so real. And it's so true, man. I'm writing this book right now about my best friend who passed away suddenly when he was 28. He was whitewater rafting, and then boom, he just had a stroke and unfortunately didn't make it. ICU, whole thing, traumatic experience, as a friend, and way more obviously traumatic for him and his family. And but I'm writing a book about him, and I actually went to Tennessee. I went to Tellico Plains last year in September to stay at the cabin that he was at on that trip that he was on. And it was really special because I got to see kind of what he saw for like the last, 3 days of his life, and got to really take that in and write about it. And it felt really great. It was almost like kind of a healing moment because I was facing those inner hurts and those questions I had for God. And to be real though, and I did good. I wrote like 20,000 words in 7 days, which was really solid. That's kind of what I did for my first book, 21 Days in Africa. It was like 3,000 words ish a day, going hard, hammering it out. And but when I got back, dude, it was like hard to get into the book because it's like I'm busy with life, and it's almost like you saying the emotions, you got to face them. It's like I didn't honestly want to, number one, because it's like, yo, let me go to the pits of like the heart to like write this when I also got like work and podcast and family. It's like I almost don't have time to be like facing those emotions. I feel I'm too booked to deal with this. You know what I mean? Like my calendar's too full to feel things right now, Right. So, and I think that's something that probably a lot of people deal with as well in this busy world that we're living in, and this constant like need to be on the hamster wheel, and also the economy's hot trash right now. So it's like people having to work side jobs and extra jobs and do all these things to be able to just get by and put food on the table, that it's like, bro, our mental health and our emotional health have been put in the back seat and maybe even in the trunk as of late.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. We're so busy that, who's got time to feel? Like,
exactly.
Sometimes we're purposely overscheduling ourselves so that we don't have to feel, but other times it's just life. You got work, you got family, you got a sport, whatever it is. Like, who's got time for that? Because I bet you that writing the process of you being in that cabin where your friend was and writing all that, I bet you that was incredibly therapeutic and cathartic.
Absolutely.
And I also bet that when you tried to go back into quote unquote your normal routine, I bet you probably were kind of feeling a little shaky inside just because you had stirred up so much stuff that had been dormant for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And even now I'm working on it. It's almost, I thought I kind of came to this revelation yesterday, so I'm kind of like speaking in real time with you here about just the experience of writing the book. I actually posted like a little snippet yesterday on our website as like the introduction, and I planned on adding more to like the first part of it, but then I realized like, man, if I keep having to add to it, like almost as if the back half, then it's almost like I'm not going to know like when to stop, you know what I mean? Because you can go on all day, so I kind of came up with a plan yesterday to just start editing it and then adding to it as I edit, instead of just going like to the back of it and trying to add stuff while back home and leaving kind of what I wrote there as the meat and potatoes while also being able to add in. So it was really cool because I feel like God gave me kind of like a window of how to like go about it now being back home, because it was really challenging. I would like go on a Monday at like 3 p.m. for an hour and just focus on it and try to write it. But it's like that little tiny window is not enough time to like get this thing done. So I'm like, all right, I need to step it up, and like this is a good way to do it. But also it is like you're saying, is facing that pain and stirring up those things that are dormant. And there's one thing that I wrote in the introduction, bro, that I think you'd really be able to speak on. Losing him with grief and the pain, it was so real. It was so tangible. It was so heavy that honestly, it opened up all these other wounds that I had from my past that I was really good at burying, that I was really good at not bringing to the surface. And it's almost like that first hole like leaked up and like water flew out of it, water being tears. And then all these other holes got exposed because of that one hole getting exposed. So do you have any insights about that, into why that is and why the grief might lead to those other pain holes rising to the surface?
Oh man, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said it. And the most important part of that, of what you just said, is you allowed that first bit of tears, that first bit of water to come through, because most people won't allow that first one to happen. We just work so hard at pushing that down, at stuffing it, drinking it away, sexing it away, whatever. It's always going to stay in there because it's not going anywhere until we lean in and let it out. And then once we let that first bit of pressure out, all these other parts of our body where all this other junk has been stored up, it starts to wake up and realize, oh my gosh, like Zach's paying attention to us. Finally, we've been begging for him to lean in and face this stuff. And now he's finally doing it. And so you just start to get this relief. And most people tell me, like, once they allow that first bit of emotion to come out, once they face it for the first time, that's the most difficult part, because the rest of it, they start to come alive again. As more and more stuff comes out, they feel like their real version of themselves, maybe for the first time ever, or at least for the first time in a long time. And grief, like you said, man, that is, I still don't know of an experience that takes more of a toll on us as humans than grief. And so often we just don't actually grieve. You know, we'll give words to it. We'll say, yeah, I'm really sad, I miss them, or I'm disappointed this happened, whatever. But we don't actually let our body tell us what's going on inside of it. And that's one of the things, if I could speak to more men about this, is that the stuff from our past, if you just talk about it, you're not going to really do much healing of it. Just talking doesn't heal it. But getting into the body and letting those sensations actually talk a little bit and letting those emotions come through, that's what does the healing. Because, you know, people will talk to me and they'll say, well, I don't want to do therapy because, you know, all I do is they want me to talk about my trauma and that's it. I'm like, well, yeah, I wouldn't blame you, because just talking about your trauma does nothing. It actually can re-traumatize you. And so it's all about, let's check in with our body and see what our body is trying to tell us. Sometimes it's going to be unpleasant physical sensations. Other times we actually might tune into something that we didn't know was there that's ready to help us. Like the crash course in this, when God says that we're fearfully and wonderfully made and that he knit together all of our parts, he doesn't just mean our body parts. He means there's literally parts inside of us that have different roles. So, wow. You know, if you ever had a decision to make and it's a tough decision, I bet you there's at least two parts of you that are probably opposing one another. One part wants you to do this, the other part wants you to do that. And so you got this internal friction. And a lot of times it's probably 3 or 4 different parts that are arguing with each other. And if you kind of tune into that, you realize, oh yeah, God has made me so complexly that it's not just me and my voice. There's actually literally other parts in me. And if we just ignore those, then our emotions are unpleasant and our thoughts are unpleasant. But if we connect with those, we feel and think so much better.
Any advice on connecting with those and being more mindful of their existence and making room for them? What do you think?
Yeah, so one of my favorite apps is by John Eldredge. It's the 1 Minute Pause app. And you can do 1 minute, you can do 3 minutes, I think all the way up to like 10 minutes. And he just guides you through mostly silence, but it's a mixture of silence and prayer. And so if you don't want something that's prayer-based, there's things like the Calm app or the Headspace app, and they can just guide you through little steps, like taking you through a quick body scan for 60 seconds, just telling you, looking for like tension anywhere from your head to your chest, your stomach, kind of the major areas where you might feel some emotions. But for men especially, we don't have that skill or that muscle built up of finding the physical sensations in our bodies, because so often we just kind of disconnect ourselves from our body and we just live from our head and intellectualize everything so that we don't have to feel. But as soon as we start to build that skill of like, oh, I noticed that when, you know, she said that to me, my stomach started to like get queasy. I don't really know why. Like, those are the practices. That's just that building the muscle of like, oh yeah, my body's responding to what just happened around me.
Wow, that's so interesting that you say that about the queasy thing, because me and my wife used to experience, we would go pick up my son, and sometimes me and my son's mom would have like conflict, right? And it would be really awkward when we would have conflict and it would like linger, you know? And it would be like a 2-week, 3-week conflict that it hasn't been resolved, but then we would have to go pick him up. And I remember that feeling of like that queasiness, like in my body. And it was almost like my body was trying to communicate to me like anxiety about just picking him up. You know what I mean? It's like almost like what can go wrong now. It's almost like a fear that was built up in me about that. And so yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I almost didn't identify it completely until you said it just now.
Yeah, see, so you're better at it than you might have even thought. That's really the skill, is you find wherever it is in the body and you try to figure out what it's telling you. And so often it's telling you that, hey, we're afraid of this outcome happening, or like that this outcome might not happen. It's usually something to do with fear or some sort of hope that we hope is going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, then that must mean we suck. You know, all the different messages, like we can help figure out what's really bothering us if we can tune into those physical sensations first.
Man, that's good stuff. I love that. And there might be somebody listening, like, what is that first hole that you need to address? So maybe think on that in this episode, and maybe you can let that be something that you pray about, and then you try to open up that first hole and begin working on healing. Because once you get that thing healed, man, I'm telling you, I went down to, Tennessee, as I was saying, and I remember the last day I was there, I went down to the same river that my friend Armani lost his life in, and I went on this little journey of walking the river, and it was crazy, bro, because it was like, there was a huge storm that rolled through, so like, it was completely, like the bridge to get there was completely down, so I had to park like in this off-site area and walk this whole thing that was supposed to be closed to be able to get to the river. So I was the only one out there. It was so cool. It was like one of the like most godly moments of like, I'm here, it's me and the Lord, and then so I go down to the river, and I had this moment where I just felt like I was getting healed based on just facing it and based on just communicating and praying to the Lord about like what I was feeling. And it was crazy because he put there was this tree that was down by the river where I ducked off to enjoy some lunch. It was like perfect. It was like a movie scene, bro, with how beautiful it was and the sound of everything. There was a tree that looked like a cross. And it was so crazy because it made, like, in that moment, the Lord kind of communicated to me to like leave it at his feet, like leave the healing or leave the trauma and the grief and the hurt and the pain at the cross. And then so I went out and I felt completely different. It was almost like the whole became smaller, and it's still there. Obviously, I think that the Lord is always going to keep something there for you to remember and be reminded. And it's a process. There's a quote that says, "Time doesn't heal, but God heals in time." And I love that because it's like you're giving him something to work with. It's kind of back to taking that action step of like, all right, Lord, I came for this. I came here. I'm doing my best here. Help me get through this. Because for the whole up until that point, I was in the process of, when you talk about booking yourself, I was like, yo, let's be as busy as possible to not face this. Let's do amazing things for God to not face this. Let's use his story as a way of giving God glory. And we're still doing that, but it also is like, well, I was trying to help everybody else deal with Armani's loss, through the means of the podcast, that I almost like disassociated from my own journey of healing when it comes to that. And I said that word disassociation. I've been hearing that word a lot lately. Do you feel that a lot of people and men struggle with disassociation? Because that's something that's kind of like come up in my life. I have a really hard time remembering things, like where it's like a completely like blacked out moment from childhood. And like, I've been reading a lot of stuff about it, and that seems like something that could be a condition that I have, or is that what you would call it? Would you call it a condition, or would you just call it like, maybe explain it for our audience for me as well?
Yeah. Dissociation has a pretty wide range. On the more severe end of things, it ends up being like multiple personality kind of thing, which you might have heard of, dissociative identity disorder. But for most of us, it's going to be more like you said. There's parts of my childhood I don't really remember, or my certain memories of even the adult years, they're kind of spotty, and it's usually a couple things that are happening. It could be traumatic moments that your mind just says, all right, we're just going to shut this away because we're not ready to deal with it yet. And it's a way of like protecting itself from that pain. But more often what I've found out is that the dissociative memories, or the memories that we can't really recall very well, it was usually because of things like anxiety for the most part, and sometimes depression. Because let's take anxiety, for example. When I'm feeling anxious, my brain and body is using so much of its bandwidth just trying to function in the moment and just kind of navigate through the fog that is the anxiety, that it doesn't actually fully live in the present moment. And therefore, it doesn't really actually record the memory the way it should. So a lot of times it's because we've got this internal junk, those thoughts, those emotions that we keep trying to battle and press down and numb out and, out busy, out drink, out sex, whatever. And consequently, it causes us to not fully be present in the moment. And therefore, the memory doesn't get formed either at all. Or even if the memory does get formed, it's kind of this hazy memory that we're like, yeah, I kind of remember it, but like not in the detail that I thought I would.
Wow. Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that about the present thing, because I feel like it's not even so much like, oh, I wasn't present in my childhood. It's just like, and I was reading this thing last night that talked about like the trauma that you may have even experienced before you were like cognizant about could be one of the factors for disassociation. And because the video I was watching was actually this woman that was like giving chiropractic care to somebody, and she was saying that the more that she's worked on people's body, the more that she's realized that she's been able to help people that have struggled with that, because it brings things to the surface. So it's so interesting that we talked today about that. I saw that last night, and a lot of it has to do with your body and your nervous system and other things like that that have to go alongside with trauma that maybe lead to you not being able to be present in the current moment because of the things that you've been kind of holding in for so long, or just not being able to work through. And using your body as a way of working through those things is incredible. I didn't even know that was a possibility, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're looking at it from a spiritual perspective, it's like, how much stuff does God know about us that we still haven't figured out yet about how he made us? Because trauma, the research has shown over the last 10, 20 years, trauma is literally stored in the body. Wow. And so, and it makes sense if you think about it, because an emotion is really just a chemical. The chemical gets released from your brain and it gets shot all through your body. And so when you have an unpleasant experience like a trauma, those chemicals are really powerful. They get sent all through your body. And then a lot of times those chemicals will just get stuck in there. So that's what's happening when we say trauma is stored in the body. It's those chemicals never got flushed out of the system. So something like chiropractic, that can release some of those chemicals that you might not have even known were there, maybe near the spine or what have you. And then all of a sudden, thoughts start to happen that you didn't have before, and you start to sort through like, oh, this feels new, but it also feels old at the same time. So you kind of knock some stuff loose that you might not have had a shot before.
My goodness, man, you were a bag of knowledge, bro. I love it, man. You were sharp on this episode, man. I just looked at the time, and it's already 3:03 here, and I know 4:03 is where you're at. So, man, we could talk about this all day. I feel like you got a load of information. And so how can people that are listening connect with you, man? I feel like there is somebody that can listen to this right now and be like, man, I want to talk to Trey one-on-one. How can they do that?
Yeah, go to ruggedcounseling.com/group. Because we're starting a mastermind group, and this isn't going to be for everybody. This is going to be for the people that really want to go to the elite level in their life. I was talking to a buddy of mine recently, and this is probably a few months ago, and we've been designing this group to where if you want to become essentially like the Navy SEAL version of yourself across the board, mental health, faith, business, relationships, emotions, mindset, every area of your life, we're going to make a group for people that really want to level up. And it's going to be it's going to ask a lot of the people in the group. So they need to count the cost and feel like, all right, am I in a place where I'm ready to be in this kind of group? Because it's going to be some coaching from me and some other people, and also for each other to push each other to that next level, the iron sharpening the iron situation. So the group is where I'd say definitely go for that one. So ruggedcounseling.com/group. And then also on that website, they can find some openings for me for one-on-one sessions as well.
Wow, that's incredible, man. I love that. And also make sure if you're a fan of everything that he's been talking about and you want to learn more and you want to just be engaged on a daily basis, weekly basis, I would say go check out his Instagram and his TikTok. What are the handles for that as well?
Rugged Counseling.
There you go, man. You got an on brand. I love it. Well, Trey, it was an absolute blessing, man. You have truly blessed me with our conversation today. And I know that other people out there are listening and enjoying this. So thank you so much for coming on the I Like Birds podcast, man. It was a pleasure to have you.
Zach, you're awesome. Let's do it again soon.
Hey, absolutely, man. This was great. And I can't wait to see what the Lord does with this one. And I'll send you everything as soon as it's ready to be published for others to hear, so you can share it with your people, and God can keep using it in bigger ways.
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right, Trey. Hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for coming on today, brother.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, man. Have a good one. Enjoy Tennessee for me.
Will do. See you, brother.
All right, man. Wow. Yo, that was Trey Tucker. Come on, somebody. Taylor. Another one. We did another great episode about the mental health space. And you know what's interesting is that May is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. Did you know that, Taylor?
I have heard a thing or two about that.
Which is so interesting that the Lord sent Dr. John Deloney and Trey Tucker in the month of April. I don't think that's by irony. I think that's completely
by design.
It's by design. I think he knows that that our audience and even maybe your boy could use those conversations,
Same.
right? So, hey, Sam, thank you for listening, brother. Sam from the failed podcast. I'm going to be on his show tonight out in Fort Worth at 5:00. It's not recorded live, but I'm excited to bring that to you. So be on the lookout for that. The Lord has really opened up some cool doors, and Sam being one of them sent the invite. So I'm super excited to go out there and listen to talk with him and on his the failed podcast, which you can also find on YouTube and all podcast platforms. But man, that was some powerful stuff. If this is your first time here, do me a favor and subscribe to the show. We're having some incredible guests. God has been coming through in a big way lately. We've been reaching a new audience, which has been so exciting. And if you're one of those audiences, I'm super grateful you're here. So please just subscribe so you can check out more of the content and some of our past episodes, and even maybe go back to the beginning of the faith journey, man. I've been hearing a lot of really good things about people that have been finding us for the first time and then checking out the older episodes, seeing what the journey's been like, growing in their faith as we've grown in ours, and then, catching up to where we are today. So that's a blessing, and I encourage you to do that if you're a new time listener. If you enjoyed this one specifically and you want to help us out even further, if you're like, yo, I am bought into the vision of I Like Birds, I love that conversation, I want more people to hear it, do me a solid, send it to people that you think would really find value in this. I really believe that conversation was life-giving. I feel so much lighter after talking to Trey about all those things. And I believe that it's going to bless a lot of people out there. So do me a favor, share the show if that blessed you today. And as we discussed, y'all, we have the ilikebirdsministry.com. We have the shop open for you. Use the promo code BIRDS to get 10% off. We have an unlimited supply, baby.
Unlimited.
I love it. Unlimited. It sounds so good because I'm telling you, I've been stressing inventory for 4 years now. Since we've been doing I Like Birds, I've been stressing inventory of having to update the website and being like, oh, we only have 2 shirts of this size. So the fact that we can get one-offs now at Fully Promoted in Fort Worth is a huge blessing. So shout out to them as well. Our live show with Alex Birkin went awesome. Thank you to everybody that showed up for that. That was so cool. With a little Thread family came through. Taylor Perky came through, made sure we were able to live stream. So that's still available on our YouTube live if you want to check that out while we get it in post-production, which Taylor Perky used to have to send me that. And and then also, I'm doing he cut that part out. That's hilarious. I'm doing a prison mission on April 20th with Charlie Owens. So there are some really cool things happening with that one. Number one, an inmate is going to be preaching the word of God that night. Praise God. Named Frank Brown. He's going to do an amazing job. He's a bag of knowledge for Jesus. And we're also at that Bridgeport, Texas. There is a need that if you wanted to help out in any kind of capacity, maybe you don't have the funds to get merch, even though, hey, I give you a promo code. Hey, you get the merch. We have dog needs. Dog needs. This sounds so weird because even on the phone call with Charlie, I was like, what do you mean they can have dogs? But the prisoners are now going to be able to have dogs.
That's awesome.
How cool is that? I have some they can have in my backyard. I have a few that they can have. So I might be donating dogs, and but we need some materials. Let me give you some things that I can share with you guys off top of this list here. She sent over a big list. So if you have anything that's dog related, let me know. Dog toys, balls, dog shampoo. I don't know why that was the first one I chose, but it just obviously sounded funny. Lord, I repent. Dog food, dog treats, nail clippers, supplies, flea and tick medications, heartworm medications, first aid supplies, crates. This is a big one. I know everybody out there that got dogs got a crate that they don't use, or a soft bed for the dog, which I think I actually have that me and my wife are going to donate. I'm going to circle this one because we'll be donating that. Collars, leashes, harnesses, anything you could think of for a dog. Baseball caps. I don't know why baseball caps is on there, but all right, baseball caps. Sure, somebody got some of those. I don't know why that would be for a dog, but it's on the list, so they need that maybe for the peeps there. I don't know, but yeah, man. So a lot of stuff on here. And for humans, they got duplication of handouts, writing utensils, journals, notebooks. So hit me up. You can go to, you can email me if you have any of those things at ilikebirdshow@gmail.com. Once again, that's ilikebirdshow@gmail.com. If you want to go ahead and bless the Texas prison mission of bringing dogs to the prisoners, so they have something to do. So and something to take care of. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's very special. So. Man, what else we got coming up? I think that's about it, y'all. We've been publishing, we've been recording a lot of episodes, and we're going to be publishing a whole lot more that we've recorded over the next few weeks. If you're watching live, be on the lookout for that. It's going to be exciting stuff. We still got Dr. John Deloney episode we need to drop. We got Bishop Alan DiDio. We got the live audience podcast with Alex Berkins, and now we got this one. So we got 4 in the bag that we're ready to roll out there. We're going to get it clipped up and shared out there for people to see, and hopefully, help them lead them to the cross and the cross of healing. I feel like that was a big thing that was talked about today, was resilience and healing, and it's a beautiful thing. So thank you so much for being here. It's an awesome opportunity. We're here live at the Local Legends Lab in Crowley, Texas. If you are ever in need of a podcast studio, come through. All right. So we appreciate you so much. This is Zach Rippey with I Like Birds, and I'll see you on the next one. And don't forget to subscribe. Cheers.